Ladies and gentlemen, this is the original Razer gaming phone released in November of 2017. This is going to be a very fun video because what we're going to be doing is installing the newest version of Android and seeing if this device can be brought back from the dead. This was one of my favorite phones. It's actually one of the first phones that I bought with my own money, and it's quite a nostalgic trip. Here I have the Chinese New Year edition of the phone with the gold inlay Razer logo. And honestly, it's such a beautiful device. Looking back in retrospect, you're never going to have a device like this with a metal unibody construction, and it is definitely from a bygone era of the past, and it's something to reminisce about. The Razer phone, the reason why I'm doing this video also is because there are video reviewers on YouTube that go ahead and take a look at retrospect on devices, but they never put modern firmware on it or modern Android versions. They just review the firmware that originally came with the phone, and that's just not fair. Because if you're going to be able to use a device in 2025, then you might as well just put the most current firmware that's reasonably available. And here we have gone to XD developers and flashed Android 15 via Lineage OS, and here we have the Razer phone 2, the Razer phone, sorry, and it's really such an amazing phone. 120 hertz refresh rate on display, 8 gigs of RAM in 2017 was absolutely bonkers, and it really helps with future-proofing this phone. Like I said, a Snapdragon 835, octa-core processor. This thing was really ahead of its time, especially when you think about, like, even most flagships right now come with 120 hertz displays. This had a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. It had a dual front firing speakers, very reminiscent of HTC boom sound. Honestly, the construction of this, like I said, it's something that we're never going to be seeing ever again, unfortunately. And it is such a, like I said, from a bygone era of Android where manufacturers did things a lot differently than what they will ever do now. So I did see a version of this phone. It was another version of this phone that was a prototype of the Razer Phone 3 that obviously never came out. And I thought that was very interesting because you ended up seeing the bezels on the top and bottom get very small. And that was very interesting to see. Imagine what could have been. But like I said, we're taking a look at the original Razer phone running Android 15, and we want to see if we can bring this phone back. And for the most part, I think it is really interesting because Android 15 gives a lot of features. Like, you can use all your own apps, but you can use all the up-to-date apps and use your phone like normal without the limitations of being stuck on an older version of Android, and that's amazing. The only thing is the limitations in terms of the hardware that you cannot really overcome. And specifically in terms of the battery is a big issue in terms of longevity. You have a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, but right now in this day and age, with especially Razer, they had a really bad quality control issue in terms of the cells. The quality of the cells they used are not very good. And that 4,000 milliamp hours is probably maybe 2,900 milliamp hours in practice. And your phone's going to be shutting off at 15% or something along those lines. And software can help with that because it can help gauge when your phone shuts off and re-gauge your battery. But it's never gonna fix it unless you actually change the battery. The 120 hertz display feels absolutely nice, buttery smooth, and when this phone originally came out, people complained about the brightness, and I have to say I have it here in bright sunlight, and I don't notice sort of any issues. Now, it could be brighter, but again, this is one of the first 120 hertz displays, so you sort of have to go in knowing that there's going to be some setbacks. This was the peak of Android display technology at the time. It is IPS, so it's not AMOLED, but still, this is such an amazing device to go back and take a look at. The front firing, a lot of things haven't really aged well. Like I mentioned, the battery, the front firing speakers, at the time I thought they were the best speakers ever, and now going back, they kind of are mediocre, if anything, compared to modern devices, especially in terms of treble and clarity. And it's quite a shame, because my memory in retrospect of this really made it seem like these were the best speakers ever, and that's definitely not the case. The antennas kind of suck on this phone. I'm not even gonna lie, the antennas are so bad. And what I mean by that is by the Wi-Fi reach distances, your ability to get 4G and stuff like that. You know, even by older device standards, like I have a Galaxy S6, and getting Wi-Fi at the same range, it's just the antennas really suck for this device. I do have this Snapdragon 835 absolutely screaming at its performance mode, pegged to its max clock speeds, and also the GPU in the performance mode, and we have disabled thermals, so you know we're running this phone as fast as we could possibly can, so we can get a good gauge in terms of how well it performs, even with its best case scenario, and really it does pretty well. We do notice some hiccups, especially with video-centric apps. I want to say with first opening TikTok, and then even when you're doing like multitasking while having YouTube in the background and opening websites. But you know, that's really high intense stuff. So if you're just using this phone just to only use YouTube and to only use TikTok, you're not going to have any issues. And you know, this processor actually runs pretty darn well. You know, and like I said, we have it at full 120 hertz, full performance mode on the SoC. So the fact of the matter is that it could still keep up even 8 years on later is quite a testament to how future-proof this is. The 8 gigs of RAM definitely help with that. And do I think, would I recommend this device? Well, if you have a good example, and maybe if you're pretty technically savvy and you have a good, like I said, a good example, I'd say why not? Do you bring it back with Android 15, and can you use it with a modern day device? Well, I don't know, maybe not so, because you are losing, like I said, the battery life. Some things like the buttons are not the most tactile, and the whole feel of the phone is you know, kind of slippery, and you don't get 5G. And like I said, the antennas are pretty bad already, so you know, this would be a good emergency phone, if anything. A good emergency phone. I wouldn't recommend you using this as a daily, but it could be a little bit of a test. So you could run Android 15 on your Razer phone, and you let me know how you do. Like I said, as these devices get older, you might have a lot more issues, especially in terms of the battery life. But some people have issues with the display too, with parts of the display not registering touch. But again, thank you for taking a look at my video, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.